Hey everybody, this is Joseph Basic and welcome to the Fired Up Network. Welcome to NFL Blitz. Welcome to the Hall of Famer. I don't know which one I should say a Hall of Famer. Maybe both Storm and Norm Rumack and the one only. I know he doesn't have three. Notice I said 3 times. Super Bowl rings. My good friend who hasn't invited me to a barbecue yet, Randy Cross. Randy, how you doing?
I'm doing good, man. I'm doing really well. It's good to see you.
Great to see you. And it looks like you told me where you are, but tell everybody, because in Canada this week it became 70 degrees. We were still battling snow beginning of April. So tell everybody how the weather is.
Well, today in the Atlanta area, it's 78 degrees.
Everybody hates you now, all right? Everybody hates you now.
That's okay. That's okay. I'm used to that.
All right.
It's not. We don't have a mud season down here like you guys when everything thaws out. But
that's right. That's right.
It's a beautiful day.
All right, so let's get to it. The draft this past weekend. The big story is never mind. I'm not going to talk about Buffalo Bills yet. The big story is Shedeur Sanders going not in the first round, not in the second round, not even in the third round, not in the fourth round, the fifth round, where Norm Rumack should have been picked long time ago. Fifth round. Are you surprised? Yeah, right. And what do you expect? What do you expect from Shedeur?
Well, I would like to think after this latest experience, he may be a little more humble, but I doubt that'll be the case. They handled it, and when I say they, he and his people, whether it's he and his dad or he and his attorney or he and his marketing reps it's pretty clear that the league and a lot of teams, besides the fact that kind of the talk behind the scenes is a lot of teams had him completely off their board. Football wants to know, especially the NFL, they want to know that if they're going to spend a first round draft pick on you, especially a good pick, they want to know that it's the most important thing in the world to you is football. And I think it's a pretty stark contrast. Some of that video that came out of the workout with he and Cam Ward, that you had two, divergent ways of thinking. One wanted to be a rapper and was talking about marketing and everything else. And the other guy just wanted to talk about football. And all he wanted to do was, talk about the passes and talk about the offense. And they were drafted in appropriate spots in that regard. And I hope for his sake, he goes into Cleveland and, just shut up, do your stuff and win the job. Now there's 5 of them there. Yeah. That's a little unusual. You got to be honest.
Yep.
That's a little crazy. And they're 5 guys.
They selected another quarterback in the third round.
Yeah, well, they got Dylan Gabriel in the third round. They got him in the 5th round. They already had Deshaun Watson. They already had Joe Flacco. And, they already had the kid from North Carolina.
Yeah.
So, no, I'm sorry, Pitt. It's nuts. It's going to be crazy. It'll be one of those never a dull moment deals. But I thought it gave an opportunity for a lot of people to embarrass themselves, and quite a few broadcasters took them up on it.
Mel Kiper, never mind. Go ahead, Norm.
Yeah, Randy, it's a pleasure to meet you, and congratulations on your great career in the 3 Super Bowls.
Thank you.
You bet. Obviously, on the Super Bowl team, as with most professional teams, there's the coaches rely on guys, veteran guys, leaders in the dressing room to, as they would say, police the room. So if guys did come in, or if there's 1 or 2, who come into San Francisco 49ers training camp, and leaders on the team, including yourself, suspect that someone's maybe not football focused, as you were alluding to in terms of the NFL spending high picks on guys and wanting to know that they're totally dedicated to the cause, to the team, and to the sport. Does Cleveland have that kind of leadership within the room or in management that, if whatever talent Shador has, that they can get him to focus on that and set everything else aside and be the kind of player he has the potential to become? Do they have that kind of leadership in the organization to deal with young men who need to be focused, in terms of going down the right track to take advantage of the God-given skills they've been given?
I mean, I'm a fan of Stefanski. I like him. I like his offense. I like what he tries to do. I like his staff. Cleveland is one of those organizations that, when you start talking about 50, 60 years in between championships, you're talking about it's pretty much organization-wide. You don't know what you're doing. And they have been wandering in the darkness for quite a while in Cleveland. So it'll be. I mean, they're just sort of right down the lake from you fun-loving people in the Buffalo, Canada area. But yeah, they're. I don't know is the right question. I don't think they know, which is even more important. And if they did know, they're hiding the fact that they do really, really well.
Well, if we're Cleveland, I can't believe Myles Garrett decided to sign once again. Maybe he has the $600 million Guerrero lead or whatever, but I can't believe he wants to get out and then they pull him back in. Arguably, this guy's the best defensive guy in the NFL, and now he comes in here again with Cleveland. Like, good luck to Shador. Good luck to the Browns, and they'll need it. And look at the circus. The first day of training camp, there are going to be probably people coming from Buffalo to talk to Shador and all that. So it's going to be a circus. All right. So
yeah, they're used to it though.
Yeah,
they really are. I mean, you think back to the Baker Mayfield just recently, what it was like, going through all that. So, and now they've had the Deshaun Watson thing. So distractions are not hard to find.
So here,
football building
with the NFL draft, give me your grades here. Which team made the best? Which team deserves a D- or an F? I know you're not going to say anybody with F, so I'm going to say D-. All right. Which team in your eyes? And do not say Buffalo Bills, because I'm telling you right now. All right. I'm going on the limb for how many years? 75 years. All right. The Buffalo Bills will win the Super Bowl next season, or else you're going to give me a number 51 San Francisco 49er jersey. Autographed. All right? So there you go. But which team, in your eyes, made the best, and which team made the worst?
Reading some of the grades I thought was really, really interesting. I thought the best coming out of the first round might have been Atlanta, getting the two rush guys they did for a team that's got some good offensive pieces and needed some pass rush and needed some defense. They instantly can affect offenses with Walker and Pierce. They're both studs, and I think they're both going to be able to really do a nice job. I know people didn't think very much of my Niners draft. I heard some people taking shots at them. I kind of like the Giants, to be honest with you. I thought they did a pretty good job getting not only their quarterback that they wanted, and they also got with the Ole Miss kid, also getting some receiver help to go with what they already have. I think that was really, really important. Steelers, okay. Carolina, okay. Jacksonville needed some credibility. They gave up what they gave up to get a two-way guy, and we'll see if they use him both ways. But
do you think he can play both ways? Like in the NFL, we're not talking about college. In the NFL, either you're a star wide receiver and they tell you to relax, or you're a star quarterback and they tell you to relax. So do you think he could play both ways?
Well, Joe, they tell you that in college too.
Yeah.
He just didn't listen in college. And he had the perfect head coach that wanted to let him do what he wanted to do. I look at him as, to me, And I know they're
Yeah.
talking about offense first, defense second. I kind of flip that. I think it would be defense first, offense second, like 45 plays a game on the defensive side, 20 plays or so on the offensive side. But yeah, use them on both sides. But that's a lot of load on a body. And if you've seen him, if you ever see him in person, he's not a big dude.
No.
He's a pretty slight guy. He's an incredible athlete, but he's a pretty slight guy. So if you've done your, in the insurance business, risk is big. And actuarials are really, really big. So your football actuaries had to really figure out your risk load with a guy like Hunter and how long you can do that. And you can't go your career doing what he's done in college. You might be able to go 3 or 4 or 5 years, but how much is that going to cut you off on the backside with all those reps? But if anybody can do it from what you've seen out of him, he can, because, man, that kid is fast, and he has the most unbelievable ball skills. You can tell he's a good offensive player because when that ball's contested, there's no contest as to who's coming down with it.
All right, before Norm asks his next question, I got to ask you this. There are rumors, and I did my homework here because I hear you like the San Francisco 49ers, all right? So that's
a little bit.
There are rumors that Aaron Rodgers is choosing between Pittsburgh and maybe San Fran, with Brock Purdy being tossed up in the air for trade candidates. What do you think Aaron Rodgers could fit in? And let's face it, San Fran is his team and everything like that. Do you think that will be beneficial for your team?
Yeah, well, I know this century is only 25 years old, but if that was to happen, that would be the dumbass move of the century.
Wow.
If they were to do that and bring in, Aaron Rodgers he's older than some of their coaches. You're going to bring him in there? No, I don't think so. I don't think that's going to work.
Do you think he would work?
He should be a Steeler, maybe.
Okay. Go ahead, Noah.
Another quarterback desperate franchise, but I don't know why in the world. What is a guy like Brock Purdy worth in trade value? I know he's looking at a lot of money contract-wise, and there's not many teams that are in any kind. Yeah, well, there's not many teams that are in the kind of position to pay a guy like that.
Randy, I'm going to extrapolate what you were talking about earlier with Cleveland's lack of excellence. And, that goes right to the top of the organization, of course, when you see that kind of a drought. It goes, as they always say, with families and people, the apple doesn't fall far from the tree, right? So with that in mind, going back to your days and, some of your colleagues and peers with San Francisco, be it Joe Montana, Steve Young, and the rest, if you suspect someone's not on the right platform in terms of their attitude and their focus, how in general do leaders like yourselves and, Montana, Young, depending on who is there, how do they handle that within the locker room so that the coaches don't have to worry about it? What kind of thing? You take the guy out to dinner and say, hey, look, we have to have a little heart-to-heart here. Is it as basic as that?
Sometimes it's that basic. Sometimes it's slap in the back of the head. Sometimes it's, but it's incumbent upon the entire building. And if you look around the league at the teams that are really good, and not all 32 owners are great football people by any stretch of the imagination. They're all obviously in the positions they're in. They're pretty damn good business people, and they're smart enough to hire the right kind of people. And Joe's favorite team for years had one of the legendary owners, in Ralph, who really was something. And that was something that, there's another old saying, the fish stinks from the head down. And in the NFL, it doesn't take long to figure out the teams in the league that have a chance to win, because from the owner down, they're organized, they're focused, and they're ready to go. And the teams that are and the teams that aren't, I believe, in my opinion, are pretty damn obvious. There's a reason. There's a definite pattern of teams drafting in the top 10 every year. So to answer your question, I think part of it's the players, but I think part of it too is that organization, whether it's the owner, the general manager, the president, the head coach, all of them, they've got to set the tone too. That's very, very important.
Well, Randy, I'm going to ask you this. There's some talk of the NFL expanding, but expanding to Europe. You see games in Brazil now, in London and all that. How far away do you think that can happen, or will that happen? And how are they going to play in America, in Brazil and all that? And then is there going to be a European champion playing the NFL champion? Like, what do you hear?
That would be a long ways away.
That's right.
To have like divisions like that. I think the main thing to overcome is just travel. Our supersonic speed hasn't really quite kicked in, maybe as most people thought that we'd have, a 2-hour trip to London from the East Coast, which, a 4-hour trip from the West Coast to London and into Europe and whatnot. That's a hell of a long ways, and there's jet lag and everything else. So as long as that's a problem, I don't think you're going to see that. I really, really don't. But, if we can overcome that, then yeah. And because there's definitely a market. There's a market not only in Mexico, which is a huge market for the NFL. You also look in, Germany is fantastic. England was during the World League and whatnot, but I think there's plenty of places you could make that argument for. The Far East is going to be a far stretch because of the travel issues.
Okay, with 3-time Super Bowl champion Randy Cross and the broadcasting legend Norm Rumack. Okay, let's get down to the show here because I'm setting myself up for I know what you're going to say. Let's talk about the only team in the National Football League, the 2025-26 Super Bowl champions, Buffalo Bills. Give me your estimation on how they did during the draft, how they're going to do during the season. That new Highmark Stadium looks great. I expect an invitation from you, Terry Pagula. You mentioned Wilson, but what do you think of Terry Pagula?
I think he's doing a good job because he's doing kind of what I said. He's a guy that he is, kind of a sports guy. He's got a lot of money. And I think he's successful in business and is real clear on the concept of hiring people that do a job really well and then sitting back and letting them do it. And he's getting the good results. And, he's got the most important piece of this whole formula you want to talk about. And
finally, something good.
You got Josh Allen. There's not much of a limit. There's no limit to your upside as to what you can do. As long as you got him and he's at full speed and full go, there's always room for optimism in Buffalo.
Go ahead, Norm.
Randy Cross.
And by the way, I really, really like some of the defensive picks they had.
Yep.
In the draft. I thought that was real important, especially in that division with some of the teams, that they have to play against.
Randy, you were talking before about, in terms of insurance people, just in general, you talk about risk factors in terms of drafting a certain player and, how much physically can they withstand and, then you factor in their attitude, et cetera, et cetera. Have you seen, we talk I'll include myself as fans of sport, and we see certain guys who may be in any sport, you can say professional, team sports, even individual sports, go, oh, wow, this person's undersized. They can't possibly survive. And then you see that in hockey and football, basketball, baseball, all the major soccer, all the major team sports. Do you recall guys who you initially look at them and say, no way this guy can survive at this position playing this game for very long, and yet they overcame the odds through their desire, intensity, focus, and just stick-to-itiveness. Can you, even if it's rare, can you make it and stay with your desire, your focus, your workouts, and overcome those obstacles? Does it happen very often?
No, but that's what makes it so special. I think back in my era, there was a guy that played for the San Diego Chargers named Lionel James, who they called him Little Train. He was amazing, and he was just a minute. He was a tiny guy. So I don't think size. I think size is pretty overrated. It's the size of the heart. It's the old size of the dog in the fight, not the fight in the dog and all that. But I look at it as you're getting an opportunity. The worst thing you can do is look at a guy coming into the league and say he's too small, he's not a threat. Every person that's drafted, every person that's signed is a threat to whoever's playing. And as long as you have that attitude in the NFL, you're going to be all right. You'll be able to defend your job. As soon as you think you got it made, you're setting yourself up for the end of your career.
So, Randy, I'm going to ask you, if you compare yourself back when you were playing to now, first of all, there's obviously more money. I talked about Guerrero, $600 million. And what was the highest you made? Put it that way.
Just a little south of 600.
All right. Not million, right? That's it. Now, can you compare when you played to now, how different the game is? Or is it's still football is football and that's it?
Well, it was different when I played. It was more, it was a lot more violent, and it was a lot more dangerous. I think the NFL has done a really good job of legislating out a lot of the more dangerous tackles and blocks and different things that they don't let them do anymore. And it's obvious when you watch receivers go across the middle and quarterbacks in the pocket and, various examples. They've made it much, much safer. The blindside block, there was no such thing as a blindside block when I was playing. It was watch your ass, because if you don't, somebody's going to light you up. So, yeah, it was a completely, I think, different style of football. I know these quarterbacks these days that play 12, 15, 16, 17 years. There's a reason that didn't happen back in the day, because physically the odds were not in your favor.
So I'm going to ask you along the same lines. We talked about Josh Allen, okay? Joe Montana, Steve Young, or Josh Allen. I know who you're going to pick, but give me Joe Montana. Let's say is number one. Steve Young's 2, 3, 10. Where does Josh Allen fit in that circle?
Well, among those three, he's in the right. You have him in the right slot. He's third.
Okay,
but that's not an insult. There's
no.
2 Hall of Fame quarterbacks and a future Hall of Fame quarterback.
I just want to win a Super Bowl. That's all. I want to win Super Bowl.
Yeah, and you know what? There are a few teams in the league. Buffalo's one because of their frustration. They were there all those years in a row and didn't get it. Minnesota had a similar situation in their history. And I think the one team in the league that probably in their fan base that deserves to win a Super Bowl sooner rather than later, if I had to say, if there's just one, it would be the Detroit Lions. I mean, they haven't won anything. Yep. Cleveland's almost in the same boat. I think they're right around the same era as the last time they won a championship, and it's back in the 50s in the NFL days. But that would be those would be the fan bases. But Buffalo, Buffalo's been there, and that's something that I've always said. We've had this conversation before, Joe. I mean, the only thing that's worse than, never going to a Super Bowl, going to one. So now you know what you're missing. And if you do that 4 times and you don't get a title, that really sucks. I mean, that's tough. That's hard to recover from.
I don't think there will ever be again. Not only going there 4 times in a row. 4 times in a row. And that for me, and look, Norm knows this. I'm a Bills fan, live and die, but I'm also a Toronto Maple Leaf fan. The last time they won the Stanley Cup, you weren't even born. No, 1967. 1967. We're talking about almost 60 years. And let alone, I don't want to, we're talking NFL, but they have never won 3 rounds in a playoffs. They have never, back when they were winning basically when there was 6 teams. Norm could extrapolate on that because he's 120 years old. So there you go. Norm, you want to talk about that or no?
Yeah, I feel about 200, and I look about 120. But anyway, Randy Cross is our great guest, 3-time Super Bowl champion with the San Francisco 49ers. And Randy, we were talking about some of the organizations, as the analogy you gave before, that organizations, like we talked about, the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. You look to the top of the organization, and the fish, as you said, as an expression of the term, rots from the head down. 2 organizations that have a history of excellence in their past. I want you to kind of look at them. The Pittsburgh Steelers still are an excellent organization, one of the most respected ownerships, the Rooney family. I grew up loving them, those Terry Bradshaw teams in the 70s. Remember going down there. Pittsburgh is one of those American cities that reminds me a lot of Toronto. People are very nice. It's a pretty safe city on the whole. They've nicely transitioned out of the steel mills into high tech and high computer industries and whatnot. So they made a nice transfer. So it's a beautiful city to visit and to stay in. The Dallas Cowboys have certainly been a mystery under Mr. Jones. And, they have some great players, but something always goes wrong in the postseason. Last year, they had a terrible year for the Dallas Cowboys. And the Steelers make the playoffs. They seem to have I've never met Coach Tomlin, but he seems to be a great guy, high character guy, gets a lot out of his players. They seem to have a love and affection for him, as do the fans. What's the gap for the Steelers? Is it just getting the right quarterback, getting the next Ben Roethlisberger? And for the Cowboys, why is it something always goes wrong in spite of having some excellent players on that roster?
Yeah, as far as the Steelers, I think it is that simple. I mean, and they've won Super Bowls with Terry Bradshaw, and they've won Super Bowls with Ben Roethlisberger. And the big physical throwing kind of quarterbacks. It's important to have those kind of quarterbacks. It's a young. They're both kind of like young versions of Josh Allen. But the only problem is Josh can run a lot better than either one of those guys ever thought about being able to run. Pittsburgh's got hope. The whole discontent with Mike Tomlin, I think, is sort of a social science experiment to a lot of people. Guy's never had a losing season. And he's been there. He's one of 3 coaches in the history of that franchise. And he's won every year. What's job number 1? I mean, you can't control your health. You can't control who's going to get hurt and not get hurt and who you're going to have available for the playoffs and all that. To me, it's incredible that they would even consider parting ways with Mike Tomlin. I think he's one of the top 5-6 coaches in the entire league. They're lucky to have him. So, I mean, that's kind of a personal grudge I've got. I look at that every year and just shake my head, can't figure out why they're unhappy. They need a quarterback, and they need consistent studs on both sides of the ball, and then they'll be back in that mix again, playoff-wise, which gives you a shot at the Super Bowl. Dallas, as long as Jerry Jones owns the Dallas Cowboys, they will never win a Super Bowl. Never's a long time. But he wasn't the reason they won them in the 90s. I believe you could probably say time has proven that Jimmy Johnson was the difference. When they had Jimmy, they were winning, they were kicking ass, they were winning Super Bowls, and they were picking the right kind of players. Since he fired Jimmy, it's a different team. It's a whatever your term, insert term here, paper lion, whatever. You don't worry about it. You don't worry about Dallas. Why would you worry about Dallas? You don't have to beat Dallas. Dallas will beat themselves most Sundays. So, and as long as that's true, Dallas will not only not be a Super Bowl team, they're barely a playoff team.
Okay, Randy, I'm going to put you on the spot, all right? With Randy Cross, 3-time Super Bowl champion with the 49ers and broadcasting legend Norm Rumack. All right, I know it's the end of April, and you know where I'm going with this, because last year you sucked. You told me Buffalo had a chance, all right? They need to – I'm telling you, Kansas City needs to play for the CFL, all right? Can't move Kansas City to the CFL, and then I will win Super Bowls after. Give me your pick. I know it's late April because we'll talk during the year and all that for the Super Bowl.
Yeah, well, I like those same two teams in the AFC back in the championship, game again.
This time in Buffalo. Tell me this time in Buffalo.
Yeah. Hopefully in Buffalo. You're absolutely right. The problem is you've got to be minimum 14-3.
Yeah.
Maybe 15-2 if you want home field advantage. 15-2 might be close to guaranteeing it. Losing one will guarantee it. Losing two, you're still sort of in the danger zone in that regard. NFC, kind of like we've talked in the past, in a lot of ways it's wide open, but I think Detroit and Philly are young, they're fast, they're physical. I think those are the leaders in the clubhouse. Washington, if they keep getting better at the rate they got better last year, is a team to keep an eye on. My old team, the Niners, on paper, offensively, are going to be good. Defensively, they had to let so many guys go. I'm not sure exactly where they're going to be in that regard, but it's going to be the same thing. And Joe, I say this every year, and every year I'm proven right. Whatever your list is of teams on both sides in the conferences, and the reason Buffalo's and Kansas City have been so good coming out of the AFC,
the quarterbacks,
injuries and lack thereof. They haven't had that many, the high impact injuries to big name players. And if you look at that across the league, if you can stay healthy, you can compete in December. If you're getting better and getting healthier in December, you can be a Super Bowl team. If come Thanksgiving and going into December, you have bodies dropping and you're not healthy and you're limping around, you aren't going to do it. I don't care how good you are or how good you think you are. Health is what determines most Super Bowl titles.
And in Toronto last year, everybody was clamoring for a Buffalo-Detroit Super Bowl. I like that. And especially if you're in Toronto, Buffalo's here, Detroit is here. That Super Bowl will be off the charts with Buffalo winning, of course. Detroit, nothing good comes out of Detroit. Norm, close it out here with Randy Cross. Your final question.
Absolutely. Randy, I'm curious to know, there's been a few guys who've gone on to greatness in the NFL after having great careers in the CFL. Warren Moon might be the most obvious one, who was a dynastic quarterback in Edmonton, and then the same when he went to the National Football League. There's a former Toronto Argonaut and Dallas Cowboys, passed away a few years ago, Chris Schultz. I got to know him as he was a football analyst on Fan 590, the radio station where I worked for about 20 years. Chris played on the O-line with both the Argos and with the Dallas Cowboys. Curious to know if you ever get a chance just on the tube to watch a little CFL. And as an NFLer, like people, it's strange in Canada and Toronto, people shy away from it. They don't like to acknowledge it because, the NFL is the better league, which, on the whole, of course, it is. The most talented, the biggest, strongest, fastest. And, of course, the most money is paid in the NFL, so it only makes sense. But the CFL, I'll say with a high degree of bias, I grew up watching both leagues. I love both leagues. They're different, but I grew up watching both. And, if you can love college ball in the States, Doesn't mean you don't love the NFL or think it's a better league. It is, but doesn't mean that college ball isn't great, entertaining, and fun. It is. The attendance speaks for itself. Your thoughts as a great NFLer and a 3-time Super Bowl champ, for whatever time you've had to observe the CFL from a distance, your thoughts on the league?
I've always liked it. I grew up watching the Canadian Football League. I loved the CFL when I was a kid. I can't remember what nights it was that you'd see it, but I grew up in LA, and you could find Canadian football on TV down there, even back in the dark ages when I had dark hair. So that to me was always Canada. You still, to this day, college football has influenced the NFL. Even Canada has influenced the NFL on the offensive side of the ball, with the amount of motion. Well, they're not running towards the line of scrimmage, at least not legally, in our league. But, I think you see things that come out of the Canadian League that coaches in the NFL sort of look at and go, I can use that. I can tweak that. I can use that, with my teams. I don't know. Football in general, the more jobs in football, the stronger football is. That's why this springtime football, though not necessarily terribly compelling, it's great for the game because it keeps guys working. It keeps hope alive. It keeps dreams alive. And those are dreams not only of players, but coaches and front office and everybody else. So to me, that's one of the best things about Canada is there's guys still getting a chance to play football. Now, I don't think the NFL will ever adopt, the 1-2 and kick. They're not going to just go 2 down.
Not the Rouge? No, not the Rouge.
The Rouge? No way. But I don't think that'll happen. But, no, I think Canadian football, I didn't seriously consider it when I came out back in '76. Hell, I couldn't find Saskatchewan on a map, much less know when I found out they had my draft rights. But I think it's fantastic, and it's fantastic because it makes football stronger.
Thank God for the CFL, because the Argos are 2-time, 2 out of 3 years Grey Cup champions. At least I got the Argos to calm down here. But if I didn't have the Argos, I would be great like you. Come on. All right.
Hey, I'll give you another guy that was fun watching in the CFL that came to the NFL and did a hell of a job. Doug Flutie.
I knew you were going to say
that.
Yeah. You're still eating your Flutie flakes.
That's right. I did that game, that Patriots game, when he drop kicked the last extra point.
Yeah. And everybody was happy for him. Even Bill Belichick was smiling. All right. And that guy never smiles. He's like Norm. He never smiles. All right. So now, Randy, the last couple last questions here. What are you doing nowadays? I believe you're in Atlanta, but what are you doing? And fans are clamoring. Norm Rumack is even. Where's Randy Cross podcast? Where Fired Up Network used to have it and all that. And I said, only time he's going to do the podcast if Norm Rumack comes on and says hi to him and everything like that. Are you going to be in the podcasting game? Because you know what? If you're not doing podcasts, I'll gladly hire you and replace Norm. All right? Put it that way.
My biggest problem with that, I lost my producer.
Well, if you pay a little bit, I host, I produce, I get talent, and then Norm's just like a Barbie doll. Come on.
My producer moved to Detroit, and after 4 or 5 years of being my own booking agent, I got really tired of that too. So,
I know that.
Yeah, dealing with flakes like me. But that's why I want to ramp it back up, because I miss it. I miss it a lot, because not only just football. Sports in general, life in general. Because I used to cover a lot of very diverse group of subjects. And some things are very compelling to me and very close to my heart. Whether it's the CTE idea and everything else around that controversy, and I just think it's important to talk about more and more of that stuff.
I have a guy here. His name is Paul, who said, "Can Randy Cross actually be a commentator for the WWE?"
Can I?
Or
There's
would
nothing
you?
holding-
Would you?
nothing
Because
holding
I'll
me back.
negotiate that deal right now.
Hey, I'll let it be known right now. I am available.
He's
I
available.
might be
You follow
I might be
wrestling?
easy. I might be easy. I'm just not cheap.
Well, that's the WWE way, right? That's the overpay. All right, Norm, if your
No,
final question.
I was really happy to see Lex Luger, by the way, go into the
Oh
Hall of
God!
Fame.
Now he's talking wrestling to me. You know what?
Diamond Dallas
That's
Page
who
is
I
a
was
good
going to
friend
say
of
in
mine,
Atlanta.
and he did a great job with everything around Lex Luger.
And I'm telling you, Randy, I know you have a little bit surgeries and all that, but this guy, Diamond Dallas Page, is in Atlanta, and I think you should visit him. You should visit it. He does miracles not only for wrestlers, not only for MMA guys, just professional guys or just normal guys who. I have a limp here. I have, my bone hurts and all. No, it's not funny. This guy is amazing. Plus, if I get you set up with DDP,
DDP yoga.
that's right. You doing it? I do it all the time. Look, I do it all the
yoga
time.
It's not for the weak of heart. I tell you that.
Go ahead, Norm.
Hey, Randy, just a medical question. For a long time, we saw some great football players from past decades develop brain disorders, and there seems to be a strong association between, constant jarring of the brain and the head, and the likes of hockey and football have worked hard to improve safety, as you were mentioning, in terms of the rules, and also more sophisticated headwear and helmet wear to try and protect the head. And we've seen a lot of great players. Sometimes they get various brain disorders and the likes of, if there's an association, Lou Gehrig's disease, that they get it at an early age. And we've seen a number of players pass away at an early age, especially guys who played in the 50s and the 60s and the 70s. Do you feel the NFL has done enough in that direction to try and correct things? And as you said, in terms of the rules, they've made the game as safe as possible. It's a contact sport. I mean, if someone asked me if I would get involved in kickboxing again, like when I was a teenager, play hockey again, yeah, I'm not giving that up. I mean, life is too short as it is. So I take certain risks. Do you feel the NFL does enough? And do you worry at all, as yourself as a veteran player who, deals with post-career injuries? Is that something that concerns you to this point in time?
I do not think the NFL does enough for their former players, especially their older former players. The pre-free agency guys, the pre-like 93, 94 guys. But, on their side of the argument, if they wait long enough, most of those guys will be dead and they won't have to worry about us. But I think it's the CTE phenomenon, the ALS connection, go down the list, dementia, early onset, all that. If you're in a role where you're getting repetitive head trauma, your chances of coming up with one of those is pretty damn good. We just lost the other day Steve McMichael,
that's what
Hall of Fame Bears defensive tackle, passed away, and he'd been fighting that for a few years. It's a terrible disease. I lost a good friend and a teammate, Dwight Clark, to ALS. Several former 49ers have died from ALS. And I think there is a connection. Are they doing enough? No, it's still happening. So obviously they're not. But I think the league is very light. We talked about the risk idea and mitigating risk and investigating risk. The league is very aware of that. That's why the rules changed. The rules changed to make the game safer, but also to cover their butts because of what could possibly be waiting down the road, for the guys that are getting hit like that. And repetitive head injuries are something that are very endemic or very systemic with the offensive line and the defensive line. And you do see a pretty good proportion of guys that were linemen coming down with that disease. And what makes it even crazier, though, Norm, is kind of like in hockey, it's the same thing. There is no, you can't say if you had concussions, you're going to get this. Yeah. If you have all this repetitive head injury, you're guaranteed to have this. It doesn't work that way. There were guys that played NHL for 6 months, and there's guys that played NHLs for 16 years, and the guy that played for 6 months is the guy that comes down with CTE, and the old veteran is going strong at 70 years old, and you're going, well, how come? What's the deal? That doesn't make any sense. Well, it's very capricious. It kind of hits where it was going to hit. They don't really know. The best place in the world for that is Boston University. They do all the great research at BU.
Chris Nowinski.
Chris Nowinski's organization is the best. I'm a bit biased.
We talked about wrestling. He came from wrestling background. He came from wrestling background, got a concussion, and then he started opening up everything. And a shout out to Chris Nowinski. He's doing phenomenal work. We talked about DDP, but Chris Nowinski started out wrestling. He had a concussion and said, "This is not normal." And now everything with McMahon, but he was the first one to go to McMahon and said, "We got to stop using chair shots and all this." And it's incredible. Like the other guy who lived in Atlanta, also Chris Benoit, that nobody talks about, he did nightly headbutts off the top rope, and that's why he did what he did, because his brain was smashed, let's call it. And, nobody talks about Christopher Nowinski, who does amazing. The NFL should bring this guy in. He does amazing work, and he examines after, unfortunately, he passed away. He examines the brain. He examines the brain. You talked about CTE and everything like that.
Unfortunately, the only way to actually diagnose CTE at this point is still in autopsy. Is post-mortem. You can't. There's no test, and people say they've cracked the code all the time. They haven't. You can't. You can't. You can see plaquing. You can do certain tests where you can see plaquing, but you can't see the actual CTE itself. You can't diagnose the disease, unless it's post-mortem.
All right, so we're going to close it out, but I have to ask you this. You touched on it a little bit. Steve Mongo McKnight, again, another wrestler. He went back to wrestling and everything like that, but you probably know him very well. I know better than you, me, and Norm, but give me your thoughts on Steve McMichael. And he lasted so long. He was inducted into the Hall of Fame this year, and it's the way you saw him recently to the way he was. Big, strong, burly, long hair, everything. And now it's tragic. He battled and a guy, I hate saying wrestling, but Ric Flair was one of his best friends there. But go ahead, Randy.
Well, it's a sad deal. I'm really happy for him that he was in the Hall of Fame. Probably should have happened sooner, when he could really maybe appreciate it a little bit better. The last 2 years, I think two guys that have gone in, I've been really happy for Steve McMichael and Joe Klecko. They're both guys that played sort of over on my side of the ball. Those were the two best defensive tackles, besides Merlin Olsen, that I played with or played against. They were really, really good, obviously. They're Hall of Famers, and I think I'm really happy for both those guys. And it's Steve isn't suffering anymore. That is a just horrendous, horrific type of a disease, the way it robs people of their abilities. I mean, you literally can think of, you are sealed in your body. You don't have any control over your body. Yeah. And it's bad. It's really, really bad. And Steve is at rest now. He's at peace, and I think it's fantastic.
All right, we're going to close this out because I said this to Norm to do it, but he probably forgot. All right, April 25th was this guy's birthday, Randy Cross's birthday. They didn't invite me for a barbecue. They didn't invite me for a roast. They didn't invite me. What did you do?
Hey, I'm getting to the fire hazard age. I mean, it's
That's
hard
why
to
you should
find.
invite Fired Up. I'll even bring
It's
Norm.
hard.
He'll eat like a
It's
pig.
hard. It's hard to find 71 candles, much less blow them out. Yeah. But yeah, no, birthday was good. I was able to go out to dinner with one of my granddaughters and her mom and dad and my wife. We had a great dinner in Atlanta at a place called Little Alley Steakhouse, which next time the Super Bowl's here, you'll have to check that place out. It's really good.
Hold on. The only problem, if the Super Bowl's there, Buffalo should be playing, and you're going to lend me your house because I'm not paying for hotel rooms or anything like that. It's going to be like $6,000, and there's a tariff there also.
Yeah, there might be an ice storm too, just to kind of top it off, right?
That's right. That's right. But again, happy belated birthday. And Norm's birthday is next week, May 10th, actually. He turned 70. You're just a little bit older than him. But yeah. I don't even know.
Fellow Taurus.
That's right.
You
got it.
Ooh, Aquarius is the one. But I'm gonna do this live on the air here. Randy, since you have time and all that, would you like to be Fired Up Network's NFL analyst? I won't bother you every week. Maybe I can't say I want to do it more than once a year. Put it that way.
I am more than willing to come on a regular basis with you, Joe. I enjoy it very much.
All right, Norm, give him $5. All right, that's how much he's going to make. Give him $5. But Randy, tell everybody how they can get a hold of you.
Well, everything I've got going on is randycross.com or randycrossfb on X. Is probably the best, or rcross51 on Instagram. I love that, but my favorite is X. And the podcast lives at randycross.com.
And now you got to throw in, you're the new analyst for the Fired Up Network. How about that?
That's right.
All right.
Wait, is that
Norm,
check in the mail?
It's up to Norm. He's got to give you $5. All right, so look, it's $5 American, not $5 Canadian, which is equivalent to $2.50. All right, so it's $5 American, Norm.
Hey, well, I'll throw in 10. Oh, just one bonus question, Randy. I'm kind of dying to know, just as a great player with San Francisco. Which stadium, as a player on the road, did you enjoy visiting the most in terms of, I had hockey players tell me that when you're on the road and the fans are booing you and catcalling you and calling you all kinds of names you can't repeat on a public broadcast, is like they learn to use that as kind of like when you're jogging and you have music in your ears, the energy from the music fires you up. And they tell me that for pro athletes, when you're in a hostile environment, you kind of regard the crowd noise, you don't personalize, you just sort of crowd noise becomes like the music in your ears to fire you up. Which stadium, or maybe there's a couple of them, did you enjoy visiting the most because the crowd reaction, the hostility, and all the shtick that goes on got you fired up as a player? You didn't need any kind of energy drinks, so just walking into the ballpark could get you fired up.
Yeah, I always enjoyed New York and their fans. Because they were never lacking for input. They'd tell you what they thought of you. They very, very quickly. And it was always, let's be honest. The most fun places to play are the places that have really good teams, that have really big stadiums, that have really loud fan bases. So for us back in the day, the Saints were really good. So playing in that dome was amazing because of how loud those fans could get. Playing at the old RFK with the Washington Redskins back in the Joe Gibbs days, that was always just a crazed place to play. And, I'd throw the Giant Stadium in there as being somewhere that was always really fun. We had a lot of success at a lot of places that sort of quieted down in the fourth quarter, which always made places. Our goal in life when we played on the road was we wanted to be able to hear the concession guys in the fourth quarter. If it gets in the fourth quarter you can hear the guys selling hot dogs and beers and T-shirts and all that, you can hear them hawking it in the stands, you're doing your job.
And you mentioned,
Yeah, did anybody on the bench ever call a concessions guy over to sell him when the game was decided or it was like almost over? You see any of your teammates buying hot dogs or popcorn, or they'd get kicked in the rear end by the coach if they ever did?
They would have, yes. I never saw that when I was playing. I did see that when I was working as a broadcaster. Definitely.
Okay.
Where you'd look on the sideline, they'd take a shot and you'd see some guy with his mouth kind of full going.
So he wants to know.
Guy's eating a hot dog.
He's the king of media meals, right? Which stadium for when you were in the media is the best for food? He will never ask that, but he wants to know.
Wow. Dallas.
Philadelphia.
Dallas was always really good in the stadium because the media actually eats pretty decent.
We know.
I would say Dallas. I'd say Dallas, New York, Chicago is another one that's usually pretty doggone good. LA was usually.
How was Buffalo?
Days. I really couldn't tell you. I never really ate much in the stadium.
Oh, okay. No
as
chicken.
As a broadcaster, it was kind of right outside the door, but didn't get a chance to hit that too often.
That's it. All right. Well, thanks.
Because those print guys and local guys were all over. There usually wasn't much left.
Yeah, that's should I tell the story about the pizza or what?
Oh yeah.
Go ahead. You tell it better. Go ahead.
Well, I may not look at size-wise, but I used to consume so much of the media dining that when they had a tray full of pizzas in a little warmer container, I used to grab 2 or 3 entire pizzas and just take them to my desk. So they made a rule and they put up a sign, 1 or 2 slices per trip to the pizza. And somehow I was lucky my metabolism was high. So I still weigh maybe 185 to 190 at 6 feet. But they basically made a rule because I was a little bit over anxious in the media dining room.
Over anxious.
So or over ambitious. So anyways, but you're right. The media dining experiences in most professional stadiums are quite good.
Yep. No, it's good. It's good. And once you start getting a little older, that metabolism does slow down. Luckily for you, you don't have that problem.
All right. Enough of metabolism, all right? So there it goes. I'm proud to announce our newest analyst for the Fired Up Network, 3-time Super Bowl champion. Because of that, I'm going to like the San Francisco 49ers, okay? I'm going to like the San Francisco 49ers. The Bills and Niners with the Bills winning sounds good to me. But that's Randy Cross. Check it. What's your social media again?
It's what is it? Randy Cross FB for X, rcross51 for Instagram, and randycross.com.
And I promise it will not be a year till I get you on again. Hopefully in another 2 or 3 weeks. But that's Randy Cross, 3-time Super Bowl champion with the 49ers, and Norm Rumack, who can eat for like the best of them in the media meal. Right, Norm?
I guess so. Hey, Randy, it's been a pleasure to meet you and speak with you, and congratulations once again on your 3-time Super Bowl career.
Thank you, Norm. I appreciate it, man.
Okay, buddy.
All right.